Hi everyone. So I've never done live before. I thought this would be a good opportunity to kind of test it out and see. I'm hoping that the screen is working properly. I am about to set up my laptop, try to get a little bit better lighting. I do work in a garage, so it's not the greatest. Bear with me for a second. Oh gosh, that's probably terrible. Hopefully that's a little bit better. And I don't know the restrictions if you're allowed to listen to music while you're on live, so it's gonna be a little quiet, but I will get to actually cutting glass. So hopefully that will cause a little bit of a, I should say help a little bit. And I have no idea how to actually stream it on my laptop while I'm on here, so I'm gonna try and figure that out too, but if anybody is on here and watching, I am going to attempt to redo Winnie the Pooh for the third time as a beginner in teaching myself how to make stained glass. I made this twice so far, and a couple of the things that I've learned, I actually just recently learned about a hinge point, which is basically this here. You can see that it doesn't actually connect to other pieces, so it's very fragile. Just to make sure this is muted before I click on anything, so I can see comments and stuff if anybody is on here to look. So if you do have questions, I think, see them. Yeah. So I am able to see the comments as well while I'm on live. I will do my best if anybody is on here to kind of answer them. But again, just kind of testing this out to see how this goes, how this works. I've never done a live on this platform before, so, but I wanted to do the Winnie the Pooh for the third time because I actually learned about the hinge point, which is where it doesn't connect to anything else. So it has no stability. And I didn't fully understand that until it actually happened to me. And my last Winnie the Pooh just kind of split in half, literally just split in half. So I was able to fix it. I don't think I fixed it properly in the way that I would have wanted to. Ideally, I would have wanted to use U-came around the edging, but I was comparing the two processes to see how I had improved on it. So I didn't end up doing that, but I learned later that actually you want to use copper wire around the edging is better reinforcement than the U-came, which is very surprising to me. So on this one, I am going to attempt it again, even though there is this dreadful hinge point that I learned about, and I'm hoping my first one really holds up because that was a special one too. And I'm going to put copper wire around the edging of it instead. This area has nothing inside of it, so I don't think I actually have to put, it'll just be empty. This is all glass around it. I don't think I have to actually put anything inside of there as far as the copper goes. I tried using copper one time before and it was a mess. I did film it. I think I ended up throwing it across the room. It was just a disaster. So I don't know how much of it I filmed. I think I got really frustrated and ended up just scrapping the entire thing. Not really. Scrapping the entire copper wire. And as you can tell, it gets a little bit distracting when you're multitasking with this stuff. I ended up scrapping the copper wire and using U-came instead, which was the best option because my beaded edge is just terrible. So that has not improved at all. I do think that's because of this soldering iron that I'm actually using. So I'm hoping that once I upgrade that, it'll kind of take care of my beaded edge. And it's always so awkward. The nice thing about sun catchers too is that if you mess up like I did, I mean, I'm not gonna see it anyway because I'm gonna end up grinding it, so it's not gonna be a big deal. But on the edges, unless it's a square piece or an oval piece, you get away with a lot of mistakes, if you wanna call them mistakes, but you get away with a lot of just kind of imperfections. You can't even tell, which is what I love about it. So I'm actually making this for, the lighting in here is really terrible. I hope my glass is out here. I'm actually making this for my friend who has helped me with my stained glass journey. She's actually the one that I snag all of the glass from, the Winnie the Pooh glass from, because I don't have a local glass shop So I go and raid hers, and she lets me. So the very first time that I did it, it was a little bit different of a color, but this is the one that I'm using this time. And I don't know if it really kind of shows with how dark the lighting is in here, but it still worked out pretty decent on the second one that I did. And then I'm gonna end up using a little bit darker red for the shirt because I don't have any more of that red left. And it's almost a little bit brown tint, but. And then I have the honey pot and the two of them. So I think this is the one that I used last time. I'm not exactly sure. It looks like a different pattern, but I have plenty of brown and tan if I need to do that. So this will be the third time of making this one. And if anybody's in here and has questions, I am by no means an expert, but I am teaching myself how to make stained glass. And it is really good for my mental health, which was very surprising. Normally I would have headphones on and not be thinking about a single thing in the world. And it is just the most incredible experience that I hope everybody can have one day, because I've never had that before in my life. You don't think about what's going on in the world, what's going on in your life, how terrible things are, how great they are. You are just present in that moment. And it's so fascinating to me. I do wish I could have music on, but I don't know, like I said, the restrictions on playing music in the background, especially if this is like played afterwards. I just really wanted to kind of test out the YouTube Live because it's very new to me. It's my very first time being on here with it. And I wasn't sure how it was gonna go. So I thought this would be the perfect opportunity to just kind of see. Another thing that I learned was something I don't fully understand the difference between the straight, having this straight line here versus having a curved line when it comes to the hinge point. But somebody else had mentioned that too. So that's something that I kind of want to learn and figure out why that matters. I know when it comes to cuts it matters, but as far as the hinge point went, I was a little bit confused by that. I do wish that I would have made his ears a little bit bigger, since this is the third time that I'm doing it. And I hope that I have another copy of this. So normally you would have two copies of this, one that you would then lay your glass on top of, one that you cut so that you can trace your pattern. A lot of people use vinyl, which I think is really great. I would love to try it at some point, but investing in a Cricut machine or Cricut, however you say it, it's just a totally different process. And it's kind of a big investment for somebody just learning. I'd rather spend that money on glass at this time. And so the reason you kind of have, and I never measured the thickness of these lines either, which I do have to do eventually. I do the copper foil method. So if you're doing the lead came version, you will have a different thickness of the space in between. But for copper foil, you also need a little bit of a gap because you don't want it to be pressed against each other. So you need a little bit of a gap when you're cutting out your pieces so that the solder, when it's time to solder after you've foiled your pieces, has a place to kind of connect. And so you do these gaps, and you'll notice that I'm kind of cutting out the black line too, probably really terribly while it's on screen because it's intimidating going live, but we'll see what happens. And you cut that out because that's going to provide a little bit of a gap, especially once your lines are actually accurate. I'm pretty sure this doesn't much matter for me right now still. I feel like the last two projects I've done, I have reverted back to almost like the very first project I did where my cutting was just terrible. I know that's not true, but it just feels like my actual glass cutting skills have somehow gotten worse. So this was another area that I saw with the first two projects that I really struggled with. And so it's something with my cuts here, and I'm not quite sure what it is or how to fix it in the pattern itself, assuming this one does work once I put the copper wire around it to kind of hold it together and reinforce it. But I'm not sure what causes me to cut such a terrible line here, if I'm cutting the curve too much here or what it is, but for whatever reason, the two projects I've done both had issues in this exact spot. So I'm gonna try and pay a little bit more attention to that this time around too. And hopefully almost done. Probably should have prepped this part beforehand, but again, I just wanted to see what live was about, how it works, if people chimed in, if people watched. I have no idea. I do have my laptop open if there is anybody that does have questions. And I'm happy to answer them, to my best of my ability at least. And so once I'm done cutting these pieces out, I am going to trace them onto my glass and then get to cutting. I don't know if anybody on here or that sees this has also seen some of my shorts. I am working on longer videos of each project to kind of talk about what I've learned, how I could improve, all of that good stuff. But I noticed that I'm really thankful that I had been documenting this entire journey because, sorry everybody, because I have the ability to go back and look at the improvement or not improvement, I guess, on some pieces of my skills. And so when I was cutting this the very first time that I ever cut this piece here, I didn't even bother. I literally grabbed my Sharpie and just marked it off that I needed to grind it on my grinder because I didn't know how to cut that curve. And the second time I did it, I just went in, got as close as I could, and was surprisingly okay at it. This is a trouble area, so I am gonna kind of do this time around and hope that I can line it up properly. Get this one sorted. Because this was definitely an issue. You can see that little section there. When it came to cutting the straight lines, you can't really cut a straight line in a corner unless you have special tools for it. So now I just have to figure out what I want to do on this piece here. If I just royally messed it up or if it's going to be okay. And I think I'm just going to leave it and I'll end up grinding it later because I guess I could do a little bit here. And you just want that tiny little gap so that your solder sticks to the copper foil. My biggest hope with this one is A, my cutting skills improve because I have been doing a couple of projects and it feels like it's just gone downhill. I don't understand. I don't know if that's normal, if it's just part of the process, if these projects are just more difficult, but we're gonna find out with this one. And as I'm saying this out loud, I am kind of regretting going live for this one because I do want to compare the progress between the first, second, and the third version of this. This was a problem area too for me. And the teapot, or the honey pot, was a very difficult and frustrating. And so I just made this pattern based off this artwork. I just outlined it, and then you kind of have to figure out where the lines go. So this was a learning experience through and through, and it was definitely where I learned about hinge points. I'm still learning about them. I still don't fully understand it. I get the idea of it, but spotting them is not easy as a beginner. And this piece here, when I redid the pattern, I kind of tried to make it a little bit thicker. Outside in my garage, so motorcycles driving by. I tried to make it a little bit thicker, but it just didn't look right. So I just have to suffer through it and get to know my grinder a little bit better. I do want to invest in fine tip markers because that seems to be a big problem when I'm tracing my pattern. The markers that I'm using right now are these oil-based ones, which are wonderful. They don't rub off as much. They still rub off and it kind of stinks. To be honest, I'm finding that the regular permanent marker has been sticking better than these ones lately, which I don't understand either, but part of the process. But I got these oil-based ones and they just bleed too much. So I do have to get an oil-based marker to trace the pattern on. This one's going to be pretty easy. So one thing that you have to pay attention to, which is another reason that I don't really want to get into vinyl, because I feel like you have to plan that ahead or know that all of your glass is going to be reversed. I don't really understand how people do that with the vinyl, to figure that out ahead of time, if they flip part of their pattern or what they do, but it's probably really hard to see on screen. But this has a texture on it, so when you're cutting, you can't cut on this side. You have to cut on this side because it just doesn't work. So when you go to trace your pattern, if you want this to be the front, you have to reverse what you're tracing on there so that you make sure that this, when it's proper, is the front side. So that is definitely a detail that you have to pay really close attention to. I just want to separate my pieces really quick so that I know what colors I'm going to do. It's pretty easy. So this only has 3 different colors. So it should be fairly easy to do. And you just have to remember, and I do have more brown. I hope I have more brown in case I mess up on this piece, which is always possible, or it doesn't really fit. I'm also really struggling when it comes to cutting to the edge. So I'm noticing that I either go just straight through it and it cracks at the edge, or I don't go far enough. That is definitely something that I am trying to improve on. And every detail matters. So when I'm doing this, it's very difficult because you have to pay attention to everything. And one little thing could mess up everything and you have to start all over. And one thing that really stinks about using this method and the tracing is that you have to have it really pressed against your glass. If your marker bleeds, it's going to create a different line. So that's something to kind of consider as well. But for a complete beginner, I'm not sure why everybody really pushes the vinyl. I tried using sticker paper, and honestly, it messed up learning how to cut. I know that my cuts would have been terrible either way. This is a terrible example of tracing, by the way. Sorry. My cuts would have been terrible either way, but it didn't allow me to really understand the flow of how the tools worked. So I don't encourage people to start with that. I think eventually it's kind of an upgrade, but to start with, I don't know. So this one is another one that's textured on the front of it. So I have to reverse the pattern on the back. And I still really struggle with figuring out how to get the most out of your glass, like to figure out where your cuts are gonna go and how to kind of save it. So that's been another lesson that I've been working through. I don't know how much of this I'll actually cut on film. Again, terrible example of tracing, but I know that I want the inner line, so it'll be fine. Because I really wanted to record this for showing the progress. But this is the red I'm going to end up using. I ran out of the other red. It's a little bit hard to see. There's not really a texture difference. If anything, this one's a little bit more beveled on this side. So I'm going to do it on this side. And there's only 3 pieces. And I know I want to reverse them. Should have probably washed my glass beforehand, but that's all right. I also really struggled with this arm of the shirt right there, that sleeve. I don't know why, but that one really threw me last time. Again, I'm really struggling with figuring out which way to go on the curves. I hope it doesn't downpour because it's going to get really loud in here. But I think I'm just going to go straight across and see what happens. And if you ever can, use the edge to your advantage. That is one thing that I definitely learned, is use those edges if you can. And I'm probably kind of doing really sloppy work, not intentionally. It's just awkward being on live. And also, I'm kind of trying to rush through this because I would love to do some cutting while I'm on here. So I am definitely going to use, so I have to make sure that this isn't lined up over here, because otherwise I have to use all of this glass. The glass is going to cut the path of least resistance, which is something that's not easy to kind of to visualize when you're first beginning. And I think it's that Light Lead. I don't know if anybody ever watches him. He's amazing. The guy that uses like the real flame for his soldering. He just does it and doesn't even trace his patterns. He just goes for it. And thankfully this doesn't have much of a design where I have to figure out which piece I want to use of the glass, which, you know, where I'd want to figure out if there was a certain pattern, anything like that. So this is the glass, and I kind of try to figure out, sometimes you'll have like little nicks in there, like this side, you can't see it on screen, but has lines going through it, and that will really mess me up. But this side has little, either way I'm gonna be screwed, so I'm just gonna go for it. I'm gonna do it this way. And there's not really a texture on it, it's just the way the glass is made. I'm pretty sure this is like a fusible one. I don't really know the difference on them, but I'm just gonna use this marker because I wanna test out and see. So you do wanna see if you want your pattern, see how there's like a design in this one? If you want it to go vertically, horizontally, that is something you kind of have to pay attention to. I think it's gonna look better if I do it this way. I'm gonna stick this way. You do have to pay attention to that stuff too, and kind of where the pieces are going. I mean, if his belly is gonna look this light, do I want a darker piece next to it or beneath it on the legs? So those are little things that you eventually pay attention to, or you're supposed to pay attention to. I personally am still struggling with that. I know this is an arm. Kind of have an idea of where everything goes. Thankfully his shirt breaks it up, so I don't really have to pay attention to too much. And you'll see that the permanent marker goes on much smoother. It doesn't bleed as much, but when grinding, it doesn't stay on as well. So that is something that I'm battling with. I've heard tips and tricks about using chapstick. People use everything to try and get the pattern or the marker to stick, but then it's a pain in the butt to take off afterwards, so I don't know. And one thing I should note is most people will number their patterns, so like this one didn't, I messed up on my pattern itself, but like the 3 on here, when it's on the glass you would put a 3 on it. There is definitely a reason for it. I still just don't do it because I don't know why, honestly. My brain just doesn't compute that way, I guess. And so I have to, again, figure out the path of least resistance, what's going to save the most glass, which I'm terrible at. Oh, we'll do this. So there's a lot of steps into doing it, but it's a lot of fun. Very expensive to get started. I think I just posted a long video about the actual costs as somebody who learned and started in 2025, and it ended up being bare minimum with absolutely nothing on hand. Well, maybe like cleaning supplies, but like every other part I had to order. It was like $715, and that was without any sort of probably should have had that one a little bit further apart, but we'll see what happens. So it's not cheap, but honestly, if you have a local glass shop, there's nothing around me for like 4 hours in any direction. So the glass itself was $250 of that cost, because that's what it costs to order online to get the free shipping. I'm a little bit nervous that I messed up here where I should have had more of a space, because there's like a slight curve, so I can't just go through with my running pliers and crack it. But we're gonna see what happens. And so you can see it kind of rubs off too. That's the problem. This is not a full straight line, so I'm not going to use that because it will mess me up. There's a glass store in Illinois that's like literally 4 hours away, 3.5, 4 hours away, that I really want to check out. They have a semi-annual sale. I just missed it. And then they do it again in October. So I think I'm going to go in October and do it. I'm going to try very hard to go. I wish that I would have made the ears bigger when I was recreating this one, especially this one here. But it is what it is. This one is a flat edge, so I am going to use that. Because I know that I'm cutting here first, so I don't have to worry about that sort of path of least resistance. That one's going to be a little bit off, I can already tell. But that's all right. We will see what happens. And then after this, I am going to try and actually cut some of the glass and see how it works while I'm doing it live, and if anything goes well, because the last 2 days, it's not easy to access, but I'm making a Mother Mary, the Virgin Mary, Mother Mary, Blessed Mother piece for my great aunt. And let me tell you, I knew going into it, it was going to be quite the challenge, but I did not realize how much of a challenge it was going to be. It was another pattern that I created or kind of adjusted. And there's not many patterns available out there for like religious things like that. And it was a terrible experience. So I am going to grab my glass cutting oil, move these pieces out of the way. Some people use a grid to cut on. I don't usually. Sorry, some people have an extra pattern in here. So I'm gonna have to print another one out. Oh, just kidding. Lucked out. So I did end up, this is a little bit different. You can see here, I don't have that line. I revamped the pattern because I had learned from my mistakes. And then down here, I did adjust it a little bit. So we'll see if that works. But some people use a grid to cut on to catch all of their little pieces. I personally find that, especially with smaller pieces, it's not worth it. For me, I mess up a lot more. So you take some glass cutting oil. You don't need a ton. I actually go through more than I think you do. And the only reason that I do this is because for whatever reason, and I read that, or people were commenting about it, that all of these tools leak, so it's not just this one. I don't know if it's because they're cheap tools, but you put the oil in here normally, and no matter how tight it is, it just leaks out. So I find that it's best for me if I just dip it and then go. And there are two different tools, the basic tools. There are many different tools, but basic tools. I have a lot of issues with my pointer finger, and so I don't have a ton of control when I'm using this one. And if I go like this, I just feel like, I know that I've been getting a little bit better at guiding it, but this one just feels more comfortable for me, even though it looks like I'm struggling really hard when I use it. But we'll see. We'll see how this goes today. And hopefully it's on there. And so you hear where that kind of stopped. It's because there is a little bit of a nick in the glass, and that really messes you up. Normally it's a much more satisfying sound, but I'm working in a very messy area. And I don't know which way to go on this one, if I should go straight up or this way. So I'm gonna go straight up. I feel like I'm gonna save more glass if I do that. And you don't have to dip it every single time when you go to make a cut. But you do need to make sure that you have, oh gosh, sorry guys. You do need to make sure that you have cutting oil on there. And these pieces, this like ceramic-y kind of style, doesn't make the greatest for noises. But some of the other glass will definitely do a little bit better. You can also just, hopefully this works, pop it that way. So this is the piece that I'm very nervous about. I'm gonna try and cut, I guess, this way first and hope that I don't nick his stomach. So you can see that I like smashed it a little bit there. I struggle with that part still. I think it's gonna work. So you can see that my lines, although still not really that great, are getting a little bit better with accuracy. I am kind of learning to guide this as well. It looks like I'm kind of struggling. I still don't fully hold the tool properly, but it does a lot better on this than that other, the pen tool that I showed. And pros will just be able to cut that, but I'm not a pro yet, so. I did have to mark my grousers as well to make sure that I was using them properly. And if you keep your hand there or your fingers there, it helps kind of keep that all in line. And you can kind of shatter that. So the reason people use the grid is because those little things, the little pieces, shatters of glass, get caught in the grid and you don't risk cutting yourself. I find it harder to cut on though. should have done that one a little bit differently, but that's all right. And I'm very intimidated to do this curve. It's very small, but very intimidated to do this while on live because I've been really struggling the last few days with this. So bear with me. And kind of holding my finger there helps so I don't accidentally kind of go off the rails. Not that it's gonna matter if you do your cut wrong anyway, like I may have just done. And sometimes these grousers just are used to break it. See, I cut that little corner off. I think it's gonna be okay, so I'm not too concerned about recutting that one. And then I can show you. And then I'm just gonna take my grinder and grind it. So this one was not the most accurate. You can see that I have a little bit of grinding to do, but much better than before. And I am gonna dump this because I don't wanna scratch myself. That is one thing that you definitely need to do more often if you're using the cork board versus the I don't know why I'm starting with this first one, versus the grid. I'm starting with the most difficult pieces and it's so intimidating to do. So we're just gonna go for it. Whatever happens, happens. I'm gonna start over here, I guess. That one was pretty good. So some people would be able to just cut it, call it a day. I am not there yet. So I'm gonna do little by little because it's not worth me risking breaking that glass, if that makes sense. And see, those edges, they still get me. And sometimes using these stink because you'll clip the side of it where you don't want to. And you can hear this glass is a little bit difficult to cut with some of those indents. And then a lot of people, and I don't know how loud this will be, this is the new thing that I've been trying. But I don't think it's... And so when you do that, it's supposed to kind of break your glass for you, but as you can tell, it doesn't always work. And I'm terrified of this piece, so... But it worked. Oh, that was exciting. Well, that was still within the line. And here's where I never know if I should keep going or just give up and use the Sharpie, but I'm gonna have confidence and we're gonna see what happens and pray for the best. And the rest I am definitely just going to grind. So I could shatter this with my grousers or attempt to shatter it, but it creates quite the mess. And this piece is a nightmare for me. But we're gonna do it. And you can tell that I really struggle with those ends still. Hoping for the best on this one. It's very intimidating, but we're here. And I also, if you can tell, I'm still learning with how to line up the cutter with my Sharpie. And sometimes that happens too, which is fine. So this is where you would risk your cuts, by the way, in case anybody ever gets into stained glass. These little pieces of glass here are not your friend. And you do want to keep your workspace clean. This is a terrifying little corner for me. Don't know how it's gonna go, but we're gonna keep going. Probably too much pressure there. And so it's kind of cracking on the back when I do that. Rather than risking it cracking, I'm just gonna grind that piece. Clean this off. Another cool thing about doing these smaller sun catchers is that they go by a lot faster. So you feel more accomplished. I may have to recut that piece there, but I know it's gonna be on the bottom, so I don't think I'm going to, because it's not gonna be a huge problem. Just to show the difference, or to test it, I guess. You can't even do the pressure on it. So that one I don't really use because it's not my friend. Don't know why I did that. but it worked. Phew. And so sometimes that one got caught in there, but I don't go to the end. And that is something I'm struggling with. So if you can tell, it kind of curved off to the side because it just takes the path of least resistance. So something to kind of be aware of when you're learning. And if there is a pattern, if anybody's on here, I do see the chat. I'm not kind of paying attention to viewers or anything, but if there is something you want to see made out of stained glass, I am open to suggestions. I started this project, this experience, no test out the actual process of it, so I'm not exactly sure how to get out of this either. Or how to sign off. So hopefully this works, but thank you for anybody who popped in. I appreciate it.